The election was devastating for people on the far right and in the media in particular. But what I was not prepared to find when I just kind of surfed through the channels was Bill O'Reilly's take on it. Now, if you can believe this or not, Bill O'Reilly's major concern the day after was not how Barack Obama had changed the political map and changed the electoral colleges and how he had won as a black man in states that even Bill Clinton could not capture in '92 or in '96, or how he had beaten John McCain in just about every conceivable category. But his major issue for the day was the fact that several black reporters and news anchors, as they were reporting the story, broke down and cried when the announcement was made that Barack Obama had been declared the winner. That Roland Martin on CNN sat there with tears in his eyes, trying to talk about it, but every time he tried to talk about it, he got choked up and just cried right there on TV like a baby, lost all sense of professionalism and just cried because of the feelings that began to come up. And so Bill O'Reilly, though he said he had no problem with it in general, brought on a so-called expert to say what he really wanted to say. And this so-called journalism expert got on television and said that it's unprofessional, no matter what the circumstance is, for a journalist to ever show their emotions. What he suggested is that because they cried at the announcement of Obama's election, now they can no longer be trusted as journalists if they ever have to report on Obama or if they ever have to interview Obama. And so because they showed their alleged support because they cried, now they were less than journalists. Strange that I don't remember anybody saying that about Anderson Cooper, as he sat for 4 days in New Orleans, trapped with other evacuees, and the emotions of the moment welled up in him, and he lashed out against President Bush and against the governor of Louisiana for not coming to rescue people, and he began to cry on television, but no one ever said that Anderson could no longer be impartial with President Bush because he cried on TV. Nobody said that about Walter Cronkite in 1963 when he interrupted As the World Turns and made the heartbreaking news that John F. Kennedy had been shot, and he sat there with tears in his eyes, choking back the tears, trying to make the announcement. Nobody said that about numerous reporters and news anchors on September 11, 2001, when they could not even get the story out. They just said, just look at the video because I'm too shook up and too emotional to talk about it. And yet somehow now, because black reporters do not have the ability to do as their white colleagues do in the same kind of circumstances, they were less than journalists because they showed their emotion in the biggest event for black people since the Emancipation Proclamation. I don't know if it was just arrogance or a lack of empathy. I'm not sure what it is that drove O'Reilly and his guests to go there, but I think the issue is that they don't quite understand what this election meant to the majority of black people. They think that the election was about Barack Obama, but I would argue that for the majority of black folk, that it was about something much bigger than Barack Obama. On Tuesday night, the emotions were so deep that poets had no words to offer. It was so deep that songwriters had no lyrics to compose and preachers had no sermons to preach. And so it stands to reason that even Jesse Jackson, who has never been at a loss for words, sat there speechless with nothing but tears in his eyes. He cried, just like reporters cried. They didn't cry just because 8 years of George Bush was over. They made him happy about that, but that's not where the tears came from. They didn't cry just because their candidate got into office. Their tears had nothing to do with politics at all. They cried not because Barack and Michelle would inhabit the White House, but they cried because parents in Africa cried 400 years ago when their children were stolen and put into strange looking ships and carted off, never to be seen from again. They cried for all of the men and women and babies that didn't even make it across the Atlantic in the Middle Passage. They cried for slaves sold on auction blocks, even in cities like Camden, never to see their families again. They cried for every person that was born a slave, lived a slave, and died a slave, never even knowing what freedom tasted like. They died for Harriet Tubman, and they cried for Richard and Sarah Allen. They cried for Jarena Lee. They cried for those who fought for America but came home to America and did not enjoy the freedom that prisoners on the other side had a chance to enjoy. They cried for those that were lynched on trees that Billie Holiday said looks like strange fruit. They cried for 4 little girls blown up in a church in Alabama. They cried for 3 campaign workers that disappeared in the middle of the night. They cried for Megan Evers and Fannie Lou Hamer and for every little black boy and black girl who was told you'll never grow up and be anything. They didn't just cry for Barack Obama, but they cried for themselves. They cried for dreams that never came true. They cried for all the abuse that was stored on the inside, that was forced to be hidden by a fake smile on the outside. They cried for everybody that had to go into corporate America and itch and scratch when they didn't itch in the first place, and laugh at jokes that wasn't funny, and do things they didn't want to do just to get a paycheck. They cried. They cried because they were able to witness God moving a people from I have a dream to yes we can. They cried because they were in the midst of something bigger than politics. Let me tell you exactly why one brother said he cried. They showed the brother, he was a news reporter, I think, down in Florida, and he was surrounded by a group of young black men, and he just stopped asking them questions, and he just started testifying. And the brother got choked up with tears, and the brother said, I'm crying right now. He said, because my own father told me they wouldn't elect a black man. And by extension, because his father told him that Barack couldn't get elected, his daddy was saying that you can't get elected. That if they won't elect him, that then they won't elect you. He said, I'm crying because my daddy was wrong. And I'm glad that my daddy was wrong. He said, I'm crying because my father told me to put a cap on my dreams and put a ceiling on what I believed I could be. And I cried because father said I can only go so high. But today, daddy's been proved wrong. That's why I'm crying. Yeah, that's why they cried. That's what was going on in the Exodus narrative that is coming to an end in Joshua's book. Brought together through Deuteronomy's conclusion and the opening of Joshua, Moses is now dead. The mantle of leadership is passed on to the new commander-in-chief, Joshua. Joshua is now given the helm of leadership, and God gives Joshua a new task. Take the people across the Jordan River and take possession of the land that God has promised. Take possession of it. God didn't say go get it. God didn't say it'll be waiting for you without a fight, but God said go and take possession of it. Freedom is never just given to anybody. God will make it available, but you got to take it for yourself. Barack wasn't tapped by the Democratic leadership to run. He took his opportunity. The primary wasn't easy. Hillary Clinton didn't just graciously get out of the way. He took it from her. John McCain didn't just say, I'm going to get out of the way and let history have its word. He had to take the election. Let me tell you something. Anything worth having, you got to take it. God will put you in place to get it. God will give you all you need to get it. But there's some things you got to do for yourself. If you want to be free, if you want what God